Welcome to the deep dive. We often think of failure as like the biggest threat to finding your life's purpose.
Right. You hit a wall, you run out of money, and you just give up.
Exactly. But there is actually a much more insidious threat to figuring out what you're supposed to do with your life, and that is success.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Because you build this life to escape whatever dysfunction you grew up in, right? You achieve status, you get the salary, and suddenly that very success becomes a cage.
A total cage.
Oh.
Because you're terrified to leave it.
Even when there's this deeper calling just screaming at you to walk away.
I mean, the psychology of institutional comfort is just incredibly difficult to break. We will tolerate a profound amount of internal misalignment if our external environment is, validating us.
With the titles and the paychecks and the societal approval.
Exactly.
Well, today we are bringing you a deep dive into a source that totally deconstructs that exact dynamic. We're looking at an interview transcript featuring a man named JoyJit Mondal.
And he's operating out of Kolkata, India.
Right. And to set the stage a bit for you, if you don't know Kolkata, it's this historic, incredibly densely populated city. It's known for massive figures in mission work like Mother Teresa and the English missionary William Carey.
It's a place with a very heavy, complex history.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this because our mission today isn't just to look at the sort of mechanics of religious ministry.
No, we're looking at the architecture of a radical life pivot.
Yes, we're exploring what it actually takes to overcome massive cultural inertia and the sheer psychological toll of abandoning a highly lucrative status quo for something that offers literally zero guarantees.
And regardless of your own background or beliefs, JoyJit's story is an absolute masterclass in navigating those complex personal transformations, especially when you're dealing with heavy societal and family expectations.
For sure. So to understand the magnitude of what JoyJit eventually does, we first have to understand his baseline, right? The illusion of normal.
Right. The version of normal he was operating from as a young man. The transcript details that he grew up in this Orthodox Anglican Christian family.
But it was entirely nominal, like purely in name only.
Yeah, it was basically just a demographic identifier, a box to check on a census form. Their actual practice was just showing up for Easter and Christmas.
Right. And underneath that, the reality of his daily life was just total chaos. His father struggled severely with alcohol.
Which led to relentless fighting between his parents.
And the fascinating part to me is that a young JoyJit looked at this environment and just assumed, well, this is standard. This is just how Christians live.
Yeah, that normalization of chaos is basically a survival mechanism.
At the time he's 19 years old, he is deep into the drug scene. He's partying constantly, and he's actively racking up police cases against him.
Wow.
I call this cultural camouflage. It's remarkably easy to wear a label like a religious affiliation or a job title without having any of the actual substance.
You just blend into the background noise of the dysfunction around you.
Exactly. If everyone around you is quietly drowning in chaos, your own chaos is invisible. You look the part, but the label is totally hollow.
And breaking out of that cultural camouflage almost never happens internally.
It takes a shock.
It does. It requires a massive external disruption. For JoyJit, that disruption was his uncle, Reverend Dr. D.K. Saka.
Who was a highly respected leader in the city.
Right. And crucially, he was the one person whose life actually demonstrated a different reality than the rest of the family's nominalism.
So the uncle sees JoyJit spiraling, and he basically forces his hand. He pushes him to enroll in an evangelical Bible college located out on the outskirts of the city.
Which, of course, his friends think is hilarious.
Oh, the reaction from his peer group is brutal. They mock him relentlessly. They're laughing, telling him, you're a drug addict, not a pastor. Let's just stay here and do drugs.
And he actually listens to them at first.
He does. He spends the entire day before leaving partying as hard as he can. He fully expects to show up at this college, invent some excuse within a few days, and just drop out.
But the mechanism of change here relies on that geographical isolation.
Right.
He needed a complete environmental shift. Moving to the outskirts of the city physically removed him from his enablers.
And stepping into an evangelical denomination, coming from his nominal Anglican background, it just shattered his preconceived notions of how religion even operated.
The culture shock he describes is severe.
It's wild. He gets to this college, and people are casually saying, hallelujah.
Which is such a normal word in that setting, but for him,
For him, coming from his traditional background, he notes that people back home were literally embarrassed to say words like that. It just wasn't done. The vocabulary, the directness, the emotional expression, it was entirely alien.
in that new environment, dismantled his defensive posture. In 2002, during a chapel session, the director of the college gave an altar call.
And stripped of his cultural camouflage, separated from his baseline, a 19-year-old JoyJit surrendered.
He boldly chose to be baptized as a born-again believer, fundamentally rejecting that hollow label he had inherited.
So the transformation is successful. He turns his life around, he graduates, and he marries his wife, Ruby.
Who brings her own intense complexity to the story. She was a secret Hindu convert, and her family remained entirely non-Christian.
Right, so they get married, and JoyJit lands a job with Campus Crusade known as Crew.
And he stays there for over a decade.
He steadily climbs the hierarchy. He rises to become the church planting coordinator for the entire East India region.
He goes from a teenager with police cases to a regional director overseeing 100 church planters.
He has power, a great salary, and a very comfortable life. But then comes the universal human struggle, getting too comfortable.
Around year 5 or 6 in this role, he starts feeling a distinct pull, which he identifies as the Holy Spirit, telling him to shift his entire focus to North Kolkata.
Now, what is North Kolkata exactly? Why is that significant?
North Kolkata represents a stark contrast to his comfortable position. It's the 200 to 300-year-old former capital of British India.
So it's very historic.
Very historic, very dense. While other parts of the city modernized, North Kolkata remained this outdated labyrinth. And for JoyJit's specific line of work, it is classified as a deeply unreached area for the gospel.
Okay, but hold on. I struggle a bit with the way this is framed in the source material. JoyJit admits he ignored this calling for 5 to 6 years. And the transcript treats this as a failure of courage, like he fell into a comfort trap.
Out of fear of losing his salary.
Right, but is that really fair? I mean, he's married, he's managing 100 people, he has a stable income. Isn't ignoring this risky urge to just go to North Kolkata, isn't that just basic, responsible adulthood?
I see what you're saying. Why penalize someone for maintaining stability?
Exactly.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the tension isn't really between irresponsibility and responsibility. It's between institutional identity and singular purpose.
Oh, that's interesting.
In a hierarchy like Crew, your value is externally validated. You oversee people, you have a budget, therefore you matter. Leading that to start an unfunded solo mission in North Kolkata means stepping into a void.
Where you aren't propped up by a title anymore.
Right. The fear isn't just financial. It's ego death.
Mm.
He knew his specific, authentic purpose was there, but he traded it for the predictable validation of being a regional coordinator.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because why do we always need a crisis to force us into making the change we already know we need to make?
It takes what he calls a forced, hard situation for him to finally resign on October 31st, 2021.
And stepping into that new independent mission wasn't just a financial risk. It presented a massive cultural and communication puzzle.
A puzzle so complex that even the American interviewer in our source material, Steve, couldn't initially comprehend it.
Yeah, the linguistic mix-up in the transcript is fascinating. JoyJit keeps using the term unreached to describe the population, but Steve, filtering this through a Western socioeconomic lens, mishears the word as unrich.
Steve actually stops the interview to clarify, assuming JoyJit means they are financially poor.
And JoyJit has to correct him. Not unrich, unreached, meaning the least reached by his specific theological message.
Which points to a profound misunderstanding of the cultural landscape in India.
But I don't fully grasp the obstacle here either, because JoyJit explains that Bengali people are incredibly warm and hospitable.
Very much so.
And he says if you introduce them to Jesus, they will happily accept him. They won't argue. So if the population is completely willing to accept the message, why is it considered such a notoriously difficult, unreached area?
Because in India, Hinduism is the majority religion.
Right.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of polytheism. Acceptance in this context does not equal conversion. It equals absorption.
Oh, okay.
Because their worldview involves millions of deities, they will gladly accept Jesus, but they will simply place a statue of him right next to their dozens of other idols.
Ah, I see.
They'll pray to him, but only as one of many gods. So a foot in the door is completely useless if the door leads to a pantheon.
It's like trying to introduce someone in a spiritual crowded room. If you bring a new friend into a stadium packed with 1 million people all shouting for attention, your friend just gets completely swallowed by the crowd.
Exactly. How do you make one singular voice stand out in a culture that is structurally engineered to embrace millions of voices simultaneously.
You definitely can't use Western communication strategies, right?
Not at all. In a Western context, where the majority is monotheistic or secular, you are arguing over the existence of a single God. The messaging is built around proving exclusivity.
But in a polytheistic mindset, exclusivity just doesn't compute.
It's culturally illegible.
Yeah,
The message gets neutralized by ultimate inclusivity.
which means JoyJit's entire operational strategy has to change. He realizes that in North Kolkata, he absolutely cannot lead directly with Jesus.
If he starts there, Jesus just goes straight onto that crowded shelf.
Right. So instead, the mechanics of his ministry look agonizingly slow. He has to spend years building deep, foundational relationships
He
first.
has to establish a completely different baseline of communication, demonstrating his message through action and trust, and saving the actual introduction of his theology for the absolute final, crucial step.
It requires a slow, methodical dismantling of a worldview. And the patience required to execute that strategy, especially without the backing of a massive organization, is just staggering.
And as if pioneering that unfunded ministry wasn't enough pressure, it was compounded by what was happening to JoyJit and Ruby behind closed doors.
Yeah, the personal trials detailed in this transcript are brutal. For the first 8 years of their marriage, they endured infertility.
Which, in the context of Indian societal expectations, is incredibly heavy.
Right. Having children is seen as this monumental benchmark of a successful family. So this invites relentless scrutiny. Joyjit describes facing indirect insults from relatives, constant questioning of their faith,
The societal assumption often equates barrenness with a lack of divine favor.
which is such a cruel burden to carry when you're trying to project spiritual leadership in a new ministry.
And then, in 2015, the devastating blow lands.
Just as they are finally seeking medical help to conceive, Joyjit is diagnosed with blood cancer,
A battle he is still actively fighting today, by the way. He's in his 10th year.
which is incredible. But because of the aggressive treatments, they had to completely stop trying for a child.
And this is the exact moment where the well-meaning advice of their community became profoundly toxic.
Right, the Christian leaders begin pressuring Joyjit and Ruby to adopt.
And they framed it not just as a practical solution, but almost as a spiritual obligation. They cited the tragic reality in India of unwanted girl children being discarded in drains or dustbins.
Which is horrific. But they weaponized a genuine social crisis to try and resolve the discomfort of Joyjit and Ruby's unanswered prayers.
Exactly.
It's like people rush in with these logical, sometimes manipulative solutions because your pain makes them uncomfortable. They want to fix the narrative so they don't have to sit with the reality of your suffering.
But Ruby's response is a total masterclass in defiant faith.
She refused to let that external pressure dictate her internal conviction. She flatly declared that they would pray for a biological child first and consider adoption later.
And, personal suffering of this magnitude, it either obliterates a leader's mission entirely or it becomes the absolute bedrock of their authenticity.
And against immense medical odds, they had their son Joshua in 2019 and their daughter Joanna in 2021.
Which is amazing.
It really is. I mean, you look at the raw data of his life right now. He is managing a decade-long battle with blood cancer. He's raising 2 young toddlers.
While executing this agonizingly slow, relationship-based ministry in a polytheistic environment.
And doing all of it after intentionally abandoning his safe salary job. The level of conviction required to simply wake up and continue this mission every day is off the charts.
It logically demands the question of how this is practically sustained. Because you can't run on pure conviction forever. There are material realities.
Right. And in the transcript, Joyjit speaks very transparently about his current struggle to find resources.
Because he operates outside the traditional NGO or church planting hierarchy now.
But he makes a highly unconventional plea. He isn't asking for charity. He says he is looking for spiritual investors.
I love that framing.
Yeah, he explicitly maps his ministry to the secular business world. He points out that multinational companies don't manifest out of thin air. They require early investors who fund the vision, take the risk, and eventually share in the profits.
And JoyJit wants business people to deploy that exact same mindset toward his work in Kolkata.
He points to the historical example of William Colgate, the founder of Colgate toothpaste.
Who famously gave massive portions of his corporate profits to fund his faith.
Exactly. JoyJit is looking at the modern landscape and asking, where are the investors willing to back a high-risk, high-reward spiritual startup?
He's basically attempting a paradigm shift in philanthropy. A charity model creates dependency, but an investor model creates partnership and shared stakes in the outcome.
And as the interview wraps up, JoyJit offers this final piece of advice for anyone, including you, the listener, who might be searching for truth amidst a chaotic landscape of options.
His directive is surprisingly simple. He just says, test Jesus just one time.
He strips away all the modern religious baggage and asks people to look strictly at the historical data. Look at the Christian missionaries who traveled from the West to the East historically.
He argues the authentic ones didn't come to extract profit. They came out of genuine love to build nations, establish hospitals, and help the poor.
He suggests approaching this with a humble spirit, asking for forgiveness, and simply letting the Holy Spirit dictate the rest.
He isn't inviting people into an intellectual debate about theology. He's advocating for an experiential test. Verify the claims through direct personal engagement.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this right back to you listening to this right now. JoyJit's story is a profound study in human resilience.
For sure.
Whether you are religious or not, it's an exploration of what it actually means to take a leap of faith. Not as some cliche, but as a terrifying, calculated risk.
It's about holding on to hope while staring down a cancer diagnosis.
And absolutely refusing to settle for the validation of a comfortable title when you know your actual purpose requires you to step into the void.
And that raises a final question to mull over. It has to do with how we view that spiritual crowded room in Kolkata.
Right, where they neutralize a calling by putting it on a shelf with millions of other idols.
We think of that as a foreign concept. But consider the modern, hyper-optimized secular world. We do the exact same thing.
Wait, how so?
We don't necessarily reject our deepest calling, we just domesticate it. We take our ultimate purpose and we place it on a very crowded shelf right next to our career trajectory, our wellness routines, our financial portfolios, and our social media presence.
Oh, wow.
We make our life's mission just one of 50 competing priorities, completely neutralizing its power.
That is so true. So take a hard look at your own shelf. If your life's greatest, most authentic calling requires abandoning your current greatest comfort, what North Kolkata are you currently ignoring in your own life? Maybe it's time to clear the room.